Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to discussing about this another session on computer networks. So in this session, we are going to discussing about what is the difference between connection oriented and connectionless service, as well as we discussing about this primitives. So basically, what we discussing about is connection oriented and connectionless service. So first, we need to understand what is the difference between and what is the use of this connection oriented and connectionless service, and where we are using these kind of services. So when discussing about this connection oriented and connectionless service, so this we go for this basically they're using the mechanism of this connection established between the two or more than two devices. Because in a situation, in any kind of communications, we are using more than two systems. We are using that, right? That should be one-to-one communications or one-to-many communication. So that is the reason they given the establishment between two or more than two devices. We are using that one. That type of devices, we are able to establish the communication between the device only. So while in this situation, we are first coming to the picture which we calling as a connection oriented service. Apparently we calling as a wired communication service. So what is meant by this connection oriented service? Connection oriented service is basically related to the telephone system, which means a communication establishment between two devices only. So when you see this figure, so device 1 acting as my source and device 2 acting as my receiver. So once the connection is establishment between these two devices, then only I can able to transmit the information with help of these kind of the required path values only. So here when we discussing about this connection oriented services, so once the two systems, the two devices must able to presence in the situation, they both able to agree the situation and we are both able to communicate and establish a connection between the system. Then only we can able to share the information. So that is the best example of this, a telephone system. That should be our local telephone system. Like apparently we are using this a landline telephone communication system, which means once the connection is establishment between the both the source and receiver, then only the call is establishing and we can able to share the information from source to destination. So that is the best example of this connection oriented services. And in this connection establishment services, in this connection oriented services, once the connection is establishment, we can able to share the information, then only we can able to terminate the connection. So here the connection establishment is very important. At the same time, connection termination also very important, because once the connection establishment, we can able to share the information. Later on, once the connection is done, when the information sharing is done, we can able to declare the termination. We can able to terminate the connection. Then only we can able to stop the communication between the source and destination. So in this connection oriented services, we need to follow this. We have to follow this handshake mechanism. So what is this handshake mechanism? Because it is used to establish the connection between the sender and receiver. So when you see this one, so once sender is there as well as the receiver is there, once the connection establishment between through this path, so here this mechanism we calling as a handshake mechanism method. So the connection is establishment between this path, then only we can able to share the information. And when you see this one, this we calling as a virtual path. This should be a streaming of my data. We calling as a streaming of my data. And similarly, in the connectionless service, what is connectionless service? In the connectionless service, it is related to a postal mechanism, because the connectionless service apparently we calling as a wireless service mechanism. We calling as a wireless service mechanism. So the wireless service mechanism, which means there is no physical communication cable presence is here. But before the connection oriented cable, the physical communication cable is must be established. Then only the call is established. We can able to share the information between the two devices. That's the reason we calling as a connection oriented. And what is the connectionless here? There is no physical communication cable is present over here. That is the reason we calling as a these devices, this service we calling as a wireless services system, and which is related to my postal system values only. Assume that one we can able to courier from one source to another destination place, because this is my source place and this is my destination place. If I interested do a courier from source to destination, I'll go for using some kind of postal services or in kind of courier services, which is DTDC kind of services. We are using that one. So there is no need of connection establishment between us, right? Once we done the courier service, we go to courier service and we write the to address value and we give the from address value. So based upon this address mechanism value, right? Based upon this address mechanism value, the courier company will take care about that one, the information transmitted from this source to destination here. So that is the reason this mechanism we calling as a postal system mechanism only, and it does not include any kind of connection establishment, because assume that one while we go for the while using any kind of courier services system, we no need to go for this physical communication presence required over there. We just go give me the requirement, we give our courier to the courier service department, and they people is transfer system to the destination persons only. So here no need of present physical communications, or no the connection is established between source and destination. Here third party is calling as a postal system that will taken as a communication to the source as well as the destination. That is purely acting as a connectionless communication system only. That is the reason it does not include any kind of connection establishment. It does not include any kind of connection establishment and connection termination. There is no need of connection establishment value and no need of this connection termination value. But before the connection oriented system, the must should be connection establishment one before we transmit information, and after successfully transmission of information, we must go for this termination of my connection. But in the connectionless service mechanism, we no need of these two kind of services, connection establishment and connectionless termination. We are not required in this scenario. Another one is connectionless service does not give any guarantee of reliability, and we calling as a scalability mechanism, and we calling as a reliability kind of services that does not give any kind of connectionless service. And in this packet do not follow same path to each destination. So first we discussing about what is mean by this reliable, right? So what is mean by this reliability, right? So where we go for this, where we send a system, where we send a courier to a destination person, right? It does not give any kind of guarantee of this reliability, because when the system is transmitted, when the packet is delivered, we can't give any kind of reliability whether packet is delivered successfully or not. We are getting acknowledgement only. Nowadays we are getting acknowledgement, but in the earlier days we were not getting any kind of acknowledgement to the services system only. We use this postal services only. We just drop one postcard in the post box. We are not getting any kind of acknowledgement whether the post is received to the destination or not. Later on, we implemented this register post kind of things only. Then we get the acknowledgement from the department whether the courier is successfully received or not. So, but in the earlier days, this connectionless service does not give any kind of reliability. At the same time, so here the packet do not follow same path to reach the destination, because based upon the situation, based upon availability of a packet, the signal may transmit to using this packet, this scenario, this routing path, as well as they may choose this routing path. Because of this, the shortest distance service, they choose the path values only. Because of that reason, the packet do not follow same path to reach the destination. Assume that one. We are courier one packet to Hyderabad to Delhi. It may transmit to directly Delhi services, or it may post into hold on this Bangalore and just go to this Karnataka services kind of things only. Because all the time it won't follow the same specific path destination. Depend upon the availability of path, depend upon the routing mechanism. So it will choose its own path for each and every packet transmission only. That is the reason we calling as it do not follow the same path to reach the destination. At the same time, so what is the major difference between connection oriented services and connection-less services? In the connection oriented services, we need some kind of a physical communication path between the source and destination. Here, no need of that one physical communication cable. That is a main concerns in the connection oriented and connection-less services. And in these connection oriented services, assume that one, the landline phone is acting as the best example of this connection oriented services. And here, any kind of courier tracking mechanism that acting as a connectionless services. The best example of this connection oriented is the landline phone, and the best example of connectionless services is the courier services only. And third one is, important one is, in the connection oriented services, we are getting this some kind of acknowledgement. We are getting some kind of acknowledgement in connection oriented system. But in the connectionless system, we are not sure about this acknowledgement policy. We are not sure about this acknowledgement policy. We may get the acknowledgement or it may not get the acknowledgement. So here, once we get this negative acknowledgement, which means the courier is, the information is not yet received. So at initially point it not yet received the signal. Immediately we just retransmit the policies only. We retransmit the information only that the advantage of this acknowledgement. That is the reason connection oriented we calling as a reliable services. Connection oriented is a reliable services, and connection less is a no reliable services. Connection less is a no reliable services. That is the reason we mention about this. This is does not give any kind of guarantee of this reliability. And second one is in this connection oriented mechanism. The important one is in this connection oriented mechanism we follow the file transfer protocol mechanism. We follow the protocol is file transfer protocol, and here we follow the protocol is user datagram protocol. We calling as FTP, which mention file transfer protocol, and here we mention this UDP, which we calling as a user datagram protocol. So these are the major advantage and major differences between connection oriented and connectionless services. And at the same time we follow some kind of service primitives. So actually what is this service primitive? Service primitive, which means it is specified by set of primitives that are available and given to the user, and whether they are go for any kind of entities are there, we go for any kind of access service mechanism is there. So here all the system, all the set of primitives are available, and we give the instruction to the source to destination mechanism, and this is simply to tell the services to the perform what kind of action it should be taken and what kind of report it should be taken. They maintain all kind of documentary kind of segmentation in the service primitives only, which means what are the source action is there and what is the receiver response is there. Based upon the receiver response, the source may give some kind of action accordingly. That we calling as a service to perform some kind of action, or it should be maintain some kind of report documentary taken by the peer entity. And this is also calling as a calling function between the layers, and those are managed by the communication among the system, and these are using for this adjacent protocol layers only. So we were discussing about these different layers when we involve in the network signal transmission or in the computer network. So yes, we are going for this many layers are there. So when we go for this calling function between this layer, we can able to manage the communication between the layers, and those are strict about this what is a adjacent protocol to the layer, and that is those are same among the communication nodal policy only. Those are same among the communication nodal policy only. So while we discussing about this communication protocol, while we discussing about this adjacent protocol, so while discussing about this layer policies, so assume that one. So in the network architecture, how many layers we follow that one, right? Where we go for this 4 layers or we go for this 7 layer mechanism. So each and every layer is involved to share the information. So here service primitives is to take the calling the function between the layers, and between these two layers, the higher layer and the lower layer, that are used to manage the communication, because while information sharing from this layer 1 to layer 2 or is layer 2 to layer 3, at the same time the vice versa, layer 3 to layer 2 and layer 2 to layer 1. So here what kind of communication mechanism we implemented based upon these protocols, based upon this we implement the protocol that should be shows impact my service primitives only. And when you see this table, you can able to analyze the what kind of primitives, and we follow this connection oriented services. First mechanism is we can able to listen. What is mean listen? So once the connection is establishment, while we use this connection oriented service, first we go for this connection establishment only. So what is mean this connection establishment? Before we establish the connection, we are listen about this the receiver situation. So when the server is ready to accept the request for incoming connection, right? If the server is ready only, then only we can able to give the request to give the connection. We can able to access the connection. We can able, that should be server is not ready. We can't able to go for this action. We can't go for this establish the connection. So that is the reason. First we need to check. We need to ask whether the receiver is ready, whether the server is ready to accept my request for incoming connection. So that we calling as the first primitive into action. Next one, it listens the primitive simply waiting for incoming connection, and the request is accepted, right? So it first should be, we need to go for this. Before establishment connection, first we need to ask, we need to listen where the server is ready or not. If the server is ready, we just give a request to just initiate the access, establish the access between the source and destination. If the server is not ready, we need to wait for until the server is accepted, server is ready to take our request. That is the reason we calling as a listen mode only, because listen in the sense simply waiting for incoming connection request. And next one, the second one is connect. The server is ready, so it should be take the information, it should be take the connection establishment, the server is ready to initiate the connection. So once the connection is ready, the server is ready, then we go for this connection. What is connection here? The primitives is used to connect the server simply by creating or establishing with waiting peer. So here, once the server is ready, which means first we need to request a server. Server give the response. If it is ready, so we ask for this, establish the connection between the source and destination. So that we establishing between the connection, we need some kind of waiting period is there, waiting peer mechanism is there, because we need to send the request and we need to get the response. So request and response, some kind of waiting peer is there. At the same time, next one is accept. What is accept? Once the server is ready, we ask for initiate the connection, which means establish the connection. Then the service primitive is simply accept the incoming connection from the peering mechanism, simply accepting the incoming connection for the peering mechanism. And next one is receive. What is receive? Once the connection is successfully established, right? Once the connection is successfully established, so the primitive after they block the server and receive the successful incoming message, receive the primitives to simply wait for incoming message, because once the connection is successfully established, so server is blocked the server. So because we are using the server, so at the duration server is block the situation, because now if someone asks for the raising a request, so it won't give a response to the another person. It should be waiting, it should be block the server for us only, because it should be establish the connection between us. So once the connection established, server is blocked, then it should be waiting for this our incoming message. And next one is send. Once this primitive is to into the action by the client to transmit a request, followed by putting some kind of receive primitive into the action to get reply. So this primitive simply sends or simply transfer the message to the peering mode values only, peering nodal path values only. And the last one is disconnect. What is disconnect? After successful information is transmitted, it should be terminate or end the connection, after which no one will be able to send any of message with help of these connection services. Assume that one, for example, the two landline phone system is mechanism is there. Landline 1 is there and landline 2 is there. So here first what we do here, we are entering our telephone number. Based upon telephone number, whether the person is available or not, whether the person is talking to someone else or in busy state or in this the system is accessing, right? All the things, once the connection is established, once we dialing the connection, right? So this is whether check the landline number 2 person is available or not. If it is busy mode, we get the busy situation. If available mode, it mentions the connection is established while we dialing the number. Once the connection is established successfully between these two persons, with information sharing, transmit and receive, right? After successful transmit and receive, right? After successful transmit and receive, the connection is terminated. We disconnect the call. That is a simple example of this connection oriented services. Similarly, in the connectionless service, the mobile phone is also acting as a wireless device. That is a primitives for this connectionless services. So in this session, we focusing about this, what is the connection oriented service and what is the connectionless service, and how it shows impact on a service primitives on network software and hardware mechanism. So in the next session, we go and discussing about this network model. Thank you.